It was the sound of the drawer that did it, not the noise itself. It slid open like it always did, quiet, smooth, well-oiled from years of casual use. No, it was the drawer's content. Something wrong, precisely wrong. The kind of thing that didn't scream, didn't shout. It whispered, and that whisper chilled the room like a sudden draft. A man's watch lay there, glinting under the soft kitchen light. Thick leather strap. Heavy. Foreign. Not his. Not one he owned. Not one he'd ever seen. He stared at it for a full 6 seconds, long enough to burn the image into his brain like a still frame from a film noir. She never wore watches. She hated them. Always said they made her feel chained. And yet there it was. Masculine. Stylish. Slightly scuffed near the buckle. Used, but recently cleaned. Like someone had just taken it off and decided it would be safe there. Safe? In that drawer? The second to bottom one. That drawer wasn't for guests. It was the junk drawer. Old receipts, extra phone chargers, half-dead batteries, a faded takeout menu from a Thai place they hadn't ordered from since lockdown. And now, that watch. He didn't touch it. Didn't need to. The presence alone was enough. It didn't belong here, and yet it was so deliberately placed. Not carelessly thrown, not buried, not tucked into the back under expired coupons. It was centered, facing up, as if waiting for someone to come back for it. Or worse, forgotten by someone who had no reason to be cautious. That was the part that made his throat tighten. The ease of it. The entitlement. This wasn't an accident. This was muscle memory. Routine. A man had been here before. Often enough to get comfortable. The drawer wasn't the slip. It was the arrogance. Like a signature left behind without fear of consequence. He closed the drawer slowly, like sealing a coffin. The kitchen light hummed above him, buzzing faintly, oblivious to the shift in atmosphere. The silence was thick now. Not empty, but full. Full of things unsaid. Questions forming too fast to process, too clear to dismiss. The fridge hummed beside him, and he could hear the washing machine cycling in the mudroom, water sloshing faintly behind the door. Life going on, as if nothing had changed. But he had. In the space between opening and closing that drawer, something inside him tilted, unspoken and permanent. He didn't go looking for her. She was somewhere upstairs, probably in the bath, her favorite place to unwind. He imagined the candles lit, her playlist echoing soft acoustics off the tile, her phone just out of reach. She always left it near the edge, screen down. That had seemed charming once. A sign of mindfulness. Now it felt strategic. Tactical. He sat down at the kitchen table, hands folded like a man waiting for judgment. The clock above the stove ticked audibly. He could still smell her perfume in the air, jasmine and cedar, faint but clinging. But now he wondered if that smell was even hers anymore. Maybe it was his. The other him. The one who took off his watch and left it in a drawer meant for junk. The thought made his teeth clench, but he didn't move. Not yet. There would be time for fury. For confrontation. For the crack of bones and the break of voices. But right now, he needed to remember this moment. The first moment. The fracture before the fall. This was how it always started in movies. A lipstick on a collar, a second toothbrush, a bill for something never purchased. But this wasn't a movie. There was no soundtrack. No rising tension. Just the low thrum of appliances and a heartbeat that felt one tick too slow. He stood, finally, but didn't turn on the lights in the hall. He moved through the house like a ghost, one room to the next, noting the placement of things. The wine glasses on the drying rack. 2. The faint scent of cologne, not his, clinging to the throw pillow on the couch. A shirt missing from the coat rack by the door. A candle burned halfway down, one he never remembered buying. It was all too subtle. None of it damning on its own. But together? Together it was a song in a minor key. Something was off-tune. Off-tempo. A dissonance you only noticed when you stopped pretending everything was fine. He returned to the kitchen. Opened the drawer again. Still there. The watch hadn't moved. He stared at it like it might blink. The hour hand was stuck between 8 and 9. The minute hand, trembling near the 12th. A time, maybe. Or a message. Or nothing at all. But either way, he'd remember it forever. The moment time stopped, he started noticing it in the spaces between her sentences. The way she paused mid-thought like her words were being screened somewhere offstage before making it to her mouth. Everything she said was just a little too curated, like she was playing the role of a wife in a well-rehearsed play, delivering lines she didn't write. She smiled a lot more lately, too, but the kind of smile you could peel off and place in a drawer next to a stranger's watch. Too wide, too quick, like laughter held at gunpoint. And when she touched him, which was rare now. It felt like muscle memory, her hands landing on his shoulder or chest without weight, like she wasn't sure what he was made of anymore. She started using phrases that didn't belong to her. My truth. Personal journey. Emotional bandwidth. She'd never spoken like that before. These were phrases lifted from podcasts or therapy accounts she'd never shown interest in until recently. And they always came wrapped in a soft, deflecting tone, sweet enough to taste like compromise but firm enough to tell him there was no room left for negotiation. Babe, you know I've been working on myself, she said one morning, folding laundry with the precision of someone packing to leave. I just need space to grow. She didn't look up when she said it. Just folded one of his old t-shirts and placed it neatly in the drawer, like a nurse tending to a man already dead. He tried. God, he tried. Took her out to dinner at the Italian place she used to love. Tried to get her to talk about the little things, the barista that spelled her name wrong, the woman at work who always wore perfume that made her sneeze. But those stories were gone. Now she spoke in abstractions, in emotional weather forecasts. Today was heavy. I'm just processing. Some days I'm just not present, you know? And he'd nod, even though he didn't know. He used to live inside her stories. Now he was watching reruns with the sound off. The phone was different now. Always face down. Always carried with her from room to room like a fragile secret. She had a new lock screen, a vague, artsy photo of a city skyline at dusk. Not a picture of them. Not even the dog. And the password had changed. The first time it buzzed while she was in the shower, he reached for it instinctively, just to see if it was something important. But the screen flashed red once, twice, then went black. Locked out. Just like him. He started noticing things she forgot. Not big things, no missing anniversaries or birthdays, but little things that once meant everything to her. She burned garlic bread twice in a week, when she used to time it to the second. She wore mismatched socks to a work event and didn't realize until he pointed it out. She forgot his brother's name when they ran into him at the grocery store. Laughed it off like it was nothing, but he saw the flash of something behind her eyes. Guilt? No. Worse. Disinterest. They still had sex sometimes. The mechanical kind. Quick, efficient, like she was checking a box. And afterward, she always rolled away first. Straight to her side of the bed, scrolling her phone under the sheets, screen flickering like distant lightning. He lay there in the dark, eyes wide open, listening to the low hum of her silence and the occasional flick of her thumb on glass. And when she eventually turned off the phone and curled up, she always sighed in a way that sounded like relief. Not from pleasure. From distance. The almost moment happened on a Tuesday. Rain tapping softly against the windows, the house dim with early dusk. She'd left her laptop open on the kitchen counter, mid-email, probably expecting to return in a second. He walked by, not intending to pry, just glancing until a word caught his eye. A name. Not a common one. He stopped. Looked again. The email was addressed to someone named Thorne. No greeting. Just, same place? I'll wear the gray one this time. That was it. No context. No signature. Just that line, standing alone like an open door in a dark hallway. His pulse ticked louder in his ears, and for a second, he wanted to reach for the laptop, click, scroll, dig deeper. But her footsteps echoed down the hall, coming back. He stepped away, calmly, like nothing had happened. She walked in, drying her hands with a towel, and smiled. Oh, I forgot I left that open, she said, snapping the lid shut without looking. Thanks for not snooping. Then she kissed his cheek, light as air, and walked to the fridge, humming. He stood there, not speaking, not asking. He no longer needed to. He just watched now. The performance, the routine, the flicker of something behind her eyes when she thought he wasn't looking, the hesitation before she answered harmless questions. The moments where her phone would buzz and she'd flinch, just a little, before checking the screen. She still said, I love you sometimes. Still cooked. Still posted smiling photos of them on social media. But the house was cold now. Not from temperature. From absence. Like someone had moved out in the middle of the night but left their skin behind. He was still here. And so was she. But not really. Not anymore. It was the grocery receipt that did it. Crisp, folded into fourths, still warm from the pocket of the gray coat she swore she hadn't worn in weeks. He found it while reaching for gloves in the hall closet. Her gloves, not his. But the paper slipped out like it had been waiting. He almost tossed it without thinking, then saw the date printed near the top, yesterday. The time, 2:43 p.m. He frowned. She'd said she was at her chiropractor at 2:30. Running behind, she texted. Getting adjusted. then heading home. Love you. But there was no clinic listed on the receipt, just a boutique deli in a part of town she had no reason to be in. A delicately named place he recognized, not from eating there, but from the last time they drove past it together, when she had laughed and said it looked too hipster and overpriced for her taste. Yet there it was, in her pocket, time-stamped and betraying her. He unfolded it fully, studying the list like evidence in a trial: a rosemary turkey sandwich, 2 imported sparkling teas, a slice of flourless chocolate cake, and, this one stopped him, a side of cucumber dill salad. She hated cucumbers. Always had. Picked them out of every dish. Couldn't stand the smell, even. Said they reminded her of damp towels. And yet she had paid for them. He stared at the small print longer than he needed to, not because he doubted what it meant, but because of how precisely it confirmed everything. She wasn't just lying, she was living well inside the lie. So well that she'd started to forget which truths used to belong to her. The cucumbers told him more than any text or email ever could. This wasn't a mistake. This was intimacy. Shared meals. Shared hours. Inside jokes he would never hear. She was someone else now, someone who ate cucumbers and drank pear lavender tea in a place she claimed to loathe, with someone who knew her differently than he did. And that someone mattered more than her chiropractor appointment. He didn't confront her that night. He cooked dinner as planned, nothing fancy, just roasted chicken and rice, and she complimented it like usual, telling him it reminded her of their second date. He nodded, smiled, asked if her back felt better. She hesitated only slightly, said yes, and added something about the new assistant being terrible with scheduling. Her voice didn't tremble. That was the part that stunned him most. She had perfected this. Lies slid off her tongue like prayer beads. Polished. Confident. Routine. He watched her eat. She cleared her plate. Left the cucumbers untouched, of course. Still allergic to herself, apparently. And it hit him. She'd forgotten how to keep her alibis aligned with her character. She'd crossed into that strange territory where deception starts to cannibalize the liar. The face might be hers, but the details were foreign now. Her new world had overwritten the old one. And so, he decided, she wouldn't see the shift in him either. He wouldn't give her anything to react to. No flinches. No suspicion. He asked her to pass the salt, and she did. Asked if she wanted tea after dinner, and she nodded. Everything normal. Everything false. Later, while she showered, he took a photo of the receipt. Not for proof, he didn't need it. It was a keepsake now. A timestamp of extinction. Of the moment he stopped being hers, and she stopped being worth saving. The moment he buried the last piece of belief beneath a printed line item that didn't belong. He wiped down the counters, folded the dish towel, dimmed the kitchen lights. She stepped out in her robe, hair wet, smelling like the same shampoo she'd used since college, and for the first time, he found the scent repulsive. Not because it changed, but because it hadn't. The only part of her that stayed the same was the part that no longer mattered. They curled into bed the way couples do when trying to simulate normal, bodies arranged in familiar ways, but with a mile of silence between their spines. He stared at the ceiling long after her breathing evened out, replaying it all, the watch in the drawer, the deflected questions, the laughter at all the wrong times. And now the receipt. Not a gunshot. Not a scream. Just a quiet confession printed in black ink. His hands were steady. His thoughts were colder than they'd ever been. He was no longer the man trying to fix a house full of rot. He was the one mapping exits, weighing leverage, plotting the demolition. The war hadn't started yet. But he knew, now, with surgical certainty, he wouldn't be the one caught off guard. Not again. It happened at her sister's birthday dinner, of all places. A long table lined with wine glasses and fake laughter, everyone dressed up to pretend they were happier than they were. He hadn't planned to confront her, not here, not tonight. But when she leaned across the table, clinked her glass to toast authentic relationships, and smiled at him like they still shared a private language, something in him ignited. She knew what she was doing. That smile wasn't affection, it was camouflage. And she didn't expect him to rip it away. So when dessert came and the table buzzed with chatter, he placed the receipt beside her plate. Neat. Folded. Like a love letter turned evidence. She blinked, then glanced down. The smile faltered, just slightly. "What's this?" she asked, voice lilting with feigned confusion. "That," he said quietly, "is where you were while I was at home making dinner and texting you about the chiropractor appointment you never had." Her hand moved instinctively to cover it, like shielding a crime scene. "I don't understand," she started. He leaned in, not loud, not aggressive, just clear. "You ordered cucumber salad. You hate cucumbers. But he doesn't, does he?" Her eyes darted. Then came the deflection. You're reading into things again. It's just a receipt. I grabbed lunch while running errands. You're seriously doing this here? He didn't blink. You were supposed to be in a doctor's office, not sharing cake with someone who knows you better than I do now. The guests around them grew quiet, a ripple of silence spreading across plates and forks. She shifted, straightened, tried to regain the stage. I've told you, I've been under stress. And you've been distant. I needed to breathe. We needed space. You didn't ask for space, he said, voice steady. You took it. And you filled it with someone else before I even had a chance to notice. Her tone turned defensive, sharper now, still trying to climb back into the lie. You work late every night. You forget conversations. You've been checked out for months. You think this just happened overnight? No, he said. I think it happened the moment you decided to start rehearsing your excuses instead of just telling me the truth. Her face tightened. You always twist things. I can't even explain myself without being villainized. Is that what you want? To punish me in front of my family? He exhaled once, slow. No. I want you to stop pretending this is about how I made you feel. You chose dishonesty. You rehearsed your absence. You rehearsed me. So well, you thought I'd never notice when you replaced me. She laughed bitterly, a last attempt at control. You're being dramatic. I didn't replace you. Then what do you call someone who knows your lunch order better than I do now? His voice didn't rise, but the weight behind each word landed with surgical precision. What do you call someone who makes you forget the name of my brother? Who gets your best smiles, your real thoughts, while I get curated affection and emotionally correct platitudes? She looked around, now aware that the room had gone entirely still. Eyes were on her, but not with admiration. With curiosity. With dawning recognition. You're embarrassing yourself, she hissed. No, he said. I'm done embarrassing myself by pretending I haven't been replaced in my own home. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Her hands fidgeted. Her posture wilted slightly, like something inside her spine gave out. It was one lunch, she muttered. It's not what you think. It wasn't serious. You're right, he said, his voice calm and cruel in its clarity. It wasn't serious. You were never serious about saving us. Her breath caught, just once. Her mask flickered, then cracked. You were gone all the time, she said, quieter now. You were always working. I felt invisible. I thought you didn't care anymore. I was building a life for us, he said, while you were building a story where I was the reason you needed someone else. But here's the truth. You didn't want attention. You wanted options. Her eyes glistened. She shook her head like a child caught with candy and unsure whether to cry or double down. You don't know how hard it's been. No, he said. But I know how easy it was for you to hide it. The words hovered, final and undeniable. She stared at the receipt again like it might catch fire and disappear. He didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't storm out. He just watched her. Watched the cracks deepen. Watched her realize she wasn't winning this time. Watched the performance collapse under the weight of her own lines. That was the final blow. Not anger. Not revenge. Just witnessing her unravel. And letting her know she no longer had the power to stop it. She followed him into the hallway the moment he turned his back to the table, her heels clicking too fast, too loud, the way guilt always rushes to catch what it never bothered to keep. You're overreacting, she hissed, voice brittle, desperate to contain the fire she'd started, eyes scanning the room behind them, checking for who might have heard what. As if the real damage was what people saw, not what she did. He didn't stop walking, just slowed slightly, forcing her to catch up like a child who'd wandered too far. It was one moment. One mistake. You're acting like I burned the whole house down. He turned, finally, and the look in his eyes made her step back half a pace. Not angry. Worse. Unmoved. You didn't burn it down, he said, voice low and even. You left the door open and invited someone else to live in it. She opened her mouth, flustered. I was alone. You were never around. Always working. Always distracted. I was drowning. He didn't blink. So you chose someone who wouldn't ask you to be accountable. Someone who didn't know you well enough to see through you. Her arms folded, defenses rising again. You think you're so perfect? Like you never made mistakes? You shut me out long before I ever stepped out. I shut out the version of you that was already gone. He replied, each word like ice poured down her spine. The one who smiled at the door, but lived somewhere else. The one who used words like growth to build walls I wasn't invited through. Her face crumpled, the mask slipping further. You'll never find someone who loves you like I did, she said, too fast, like a reflex. You think you will, but you won't. I knew you. I loved you. No, he said. You needed me. You used me. You depended on the version of me that would believe anything you said as long as you said it with a soft voice and a warm hand. But love. He shook his head. Love doesn't rewrite reality just to keep itself comfortable. Her voice cracked. Please, we can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll block his number. I'll do whatever you need. And there it was, the pivot. From defense to desperation. The promises she should have made before the salad with cucumbers. Before the lies dressed as self-discovery. Before she thought he'd never find the drawer, the receipt. The moment she slipped so confidently into someone else's afternoon. You had all the time in the world to fix this, he said. And you spent it becoming someone you hoped I'd never catch up to. Now you're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry I found out. She started to cry, soft at first, then louder, a trembling sob that made a few heads in the restaurant turn again, their conversations dipping into silence. I made a mistake, she choked out. We're not broken. We're just bruised. Please, please. But he only looked at her like a man examining ruins from a distance, not angry anymore, not grieving, just done. You chose a version of yourself that couldn't survive in honesty, he said. And now you're trying to drag me into that version so you don't have to live in it alone. Her shoulders slumped. No retort left. No tools sharp enough to cut through that kind of precision. You didn't just lie to me, he added, quieter now. You lied as me. Every time someone asked about us, and you said we were good. Every time you kissed me with someone else's taste still on your lips. You wore my trust like a costume and called it closeness. She reached for his hand, trembling, but he stepped back like her touch might stain. You don't get to beg now, he said, softer than before, almost kind, and somehow that made it worse. Begging implies you have something left to trade. She stood there in silence then, finally still, surrounded by a world that had turned quiet enough to hear her unraveling. And when he said nothing else, when he simply turned, walked back through the room, and let the silence speak in his place, it wasn't a door slamming. It was a grave being closed. Because no one fears screaming. What people remember is the silence that follows. She used to walk into rooms like they were mirrors, always waiting to see her reflection in other people's approval, her charm rehearsed, her words dressed to kill, her life curated down to the right shade of lipstick. Now she sits in borrowed clothes, hair unwashed, makeup smudged from the night. She cried herself to sleep on a friend's couch who no longer speaks to her. Not after the truth came out. Not after the group chat lit up with the screenshots. The whispers turned facts. The jokes that started with, "Did you hear what she did to him?" Her job let her go after a quiet review of conduct. Her boss didn't say it directly, but the silence in his eyes said everything. The man she destroyed everything for vanished 2 weeks after the fallout. Blocked her number, deleted the shared photos, moved cities. Or at least that's what she tells herself when he won't answer. Her sister avoids her. Her mother sends short replies with no warmth. Her friends, once lined up for wine nights and birthday posts, have ghosted her like a skipped funeral. The only person she still thinks about is the one she convinced herself would always be there. The man who would forgive, rebuild, absorb her damage like he always did. She sends messages late at night, thinking maybe the dark will soften him. I still love you. We were soulmates. Please just talk to me. Sometimes it's voicemails, shaky, tear-soaked monologues recorded after half a bottle of something cheap. Other times it's long emails filled with old photos and the word us, used like a magic spell. She comes to his apartment once, stands at the bottom of the steps in the rain, arms wrapped tight around herself like that'll make her look small enough to be pitied. He answers the door because he already knew she was coming. Her car in the lot, headlights off, hope still alive in the engine. He opens it not with anger, not with hesitation, but with the calm of someone who's already lived through the storm and decided to stop rebuilding in flood zones. She starts to speak, his name, a tremble, a plea, but he doesn't invite her in, doesn't lean on the doorframe, just stands there, posture straight, voice level. I don't know you, he says. I knew someone who looked like you. She died the day she decided to betray the man who loved her most. She tries to say it wasn't betrayal. It was confusion, pressure, loneliness. But he stops her with a glance so surgical it cuts without raising a voice. You weren't confused, he says. You were careful. You were strategic. You knew exactly how much of me you could take while giving everything to someone else. Don't call that love. Her mouth opens, but nothing comes out. He watches her, not with bitterness, but with disinterest, like someone glancing at an old yearbook photo, curious for a second, then bored. You used to be everything, he adds. Now you're a lesson. That's all. And he closes the door, not slams, just clicks it shut, while she stands there, stunned not by rage but by the absence of it. He doesn't hate her. He simply no longer recognizes her. She fades from his life like a background hum he hadn't realized had stopped until the room became peaceful. And that's the part that breaks her. Not that she lost him, but that she became someone unworthy of being lost. That her choices didn't make her powerful. They made her disposable. And the man who once would have burned the world to save her now barely thinks about her at all. She sends one last message weeks later. Just says, "Do you ever think of me?" He reads it. Doesn't reply. Not because he's angry, but because ghosts don't get answers. They get silence. And in that silence, she finally hears the echo of who she used to be and the void she carved with her own hands. That's it. That's all there is. Thanks for listening. Let me know where you're watching from and what you would have done if it were your wife.